to episode 1 of Around the Table. I'm Brandon.
I'm Brigitte.
And we want to learn things that every family, every person ought to be learning about the world we live in and the way it's made and how we should live in it. And we want to share it with you as we go. Sometimes that means that we'll have experts in their fields to share with us, but sometimes it means we'll have what we know and want to share with you ourselves. And some of that will be opinion. So, disclaimer, you might not like all of it, but we're going to tell you what we believe to be true.
Well, and you know what? We might not agree with every person that comes on here and what they have to say, but we want to open conversations and dialogue because that's how we learn from other people.
Yeah, my hope is that actually long term, we haven't really talked about this much, that we'll be able to bring on people who disagree with us strongly about some things, but that we can have civil conversation with and hear what they have to say. There is wisdom in listening, right? We should be quick to listen and slow to speak. And so if there is somebody you disagree with, but you have a civil relationship with them, ask them questions and hear what they know and hear what they have to say. Today, we're actually going to be doing that with each other.
Well, we grew up very differently. So though we had the same goals when we got married and got together, which is why we got married and got together, we came from completely different backgrounds. And so we actually have differing viewpoints on a lot of things.
Yes.
Although not the foundational.
That's a whole. I feel like there's 3 podcasts in that.
So many things. But you want to start with a fun fact?
Let's do the fun fact. Fun fact. I really like mayonnaise with my French fries.
Yeah,
not that one?
I don't dislike it. Actually, I like mayonnaise and ketchup mixed together on my French fries.
All right, what's your fun fact?
Well, so before we got married, I had the coolest initials ever.
Your initials now are amazing, but please continue.
My initials now, well, BB, but like before I got married.
We really think honor in marriage is super important. So, go ahead, baby. That's
my initials were BMW. Now, that might not seem significant.
It's
you're like,
very worldly
that's
is what
cool.
you're saying.
No, I'm just saying, like, people are like, oh, that's cool, your initials. Like, but when do you ever use your initials, right? Well, actually, when I started X-ray school, you use your initials every day, and that's how you mark your work, because on every picture you would have to put a marker that would have a little like an R or an L, and it has your initials under it, and you would have to put it on the actual plate that would go behind the patient of whatever part you were x-raying, and that's how you would know for sure that was the right or left. And now with digital, you can manually add it like on after, but still the preferred method is that it's done while it's taken, so that people know that was for sure the right and left side and stuff doesn't get mixed up. And so mine always said BMW, and everyone thought it was so cool, and so did I. And then got taken. Now I'm just BB, but whatever.
I was going to say you're BMB, which means you're the bomb.
Oh, yeah, well.
Have you not considered that?
No, but there's no O, but.
Maybe just don't talk about that in an airport.
Yeah, no. But yeah, that's my fun fact. I used to have the initials BMW.
So who are you?
So my name is Brigitte. The name is French.
Yeah.
I have French in my lineage. People often mispronounce my name, and actually he gets more upset about it than I do. But I've been called everything from Brigitte.
I'm like her defender in name. It matters.
Well, appointments and stuff, he'd always be like, it's Brigitte. And people would be like,
I would
Brigitte,
say it nicely, I feel like.
Brigitte, Bruschetta,
Bruschetta?
Brigitte. I mean,
Bruschetta.
Everything you can say. Except for Brigitte, yeah. People rarely, I'd say like 99.8% of the time they say
except for the
incorrectly.
one realtor in Maryland on TikTok who I told her your name on a live stream.
Oh yeah, you wrote it.
And she was like, is it Brigitte? Is it Brigitte? Oh my gosh, she's my little croissant. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. All right.
Yeah.
At that real estate chick, if you're listening, there you go.
Yeah, so I grew up in Florida. Actually, we both did. Fun fact.
Both native Floridians, which is... It seems really rare. Well, maybe it's more rare here on the coast because, like, the people I grew up with as a little boy in Central Florida, they were all from Central Florida. So,
yeah, I guess so. But you know what? Even my parents were born in the same county, like the same county that we live in.
You're a second-generation Floridian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and one of my grandparents' sets did. The others did not. But still,
My mom moved here when she was 2. That counts, I feel like.
Well, yeah, she was young.
Yes.
For Florida. Mm-hmm. Where was she originally?
So my mom was born in North Carolina.
Oh, that's right.
On a tobacco farm.
I knew that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was born and raised in Florida, and I've never lived anywhere else. So I never lived where there's snow or mountains. We have visited, but I didn't see snow until I was like in high school. Have you seen snow?
I
You
s-
have
you know,
seen snow.
Wait, girl. Yeah, we saw snow together. One.
Okay,
9
well,
years of
yeah, I
marriage, you start
know.
forgetting already. It's the.
I know, but I meant before we met. You did, because you went up to Maine.
Well,
no,
and
but
way
you-
before that, when I was a little boy, my sister was dating a man in Virginia. Well, he was in the Navy, and he was on the USS something or other stationed in Norfolk. And
Was
they
that in Virginia?
In Virginia,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
And so we drove up to Virginia, and we stayed at this little motel, and it snowed thoroughly, significantly. And we thought it was the coolest thing in the world to try to make a little tiny snowman out of like the trash dirt snow from the motel sidewalk.
Oh, well,
it was
we
like
did
ice.
that when it was like not a lot of snow on the ground. The first
Right.
time we went to see snow.
And then we made a ramp out of like the wheelchair ramp up into the sidewalk from the parking lot. Was all iced over, so we slid down it over and over and ruined our like tracksuit, like cold winter gear that my mom bought for us.
Well, yeah. So snow, I saw only as basically an adult. I mean, I was high school, but yeah, born and raised here and grew up in a Christian household. I grew up going to church. But did you?
I did as a little boy. We'll get into that, but I think your voice is so much cooler than mine, and I want to hear more about this. So you grew up in a Christian household, like your whole life?
Yeah, my whole life. Well, I'd say when I was elementary school, we went to a Catholic church. And my parents, especially my mom, was like, I'm not really feeling it. Like, I don't feel like I'm growing, or I don't feel like I have community, basically. And she wanted to, join, a small group type thing so she could learn more about the Bible and study the Bible, because my parents didn't know Jesus until after they got married. And they were like, oh, okay, great. You want to start a group? And she's like, no, I want to, join a group and be, taught more. I can't lead a group. So they ended up, searching around, found a non-denominational church and started going there, and went there for a long time. So basically we kind of landed there, I'd say when I started high school, end of middle school, high school. And so that was where I grew up and learned a lot. Went to camps in the summer, with youth groups, and it was fun. I think it definitely kept me out of trouble in high school because I didn't hang out with school friends. I hung out with people at church. So I kind of had separate friends. Plus, I lived far from my school. It wasn't like I went to a local, I went to a magnet school, so it was 20 minutes, 25 minutes away, and my parents drove me there. So I didn't live close. And they lived even further, on the other side. So say the school is in the middle, people came from the four corners of the county to go there. And so I didn't really live near many people anyways. So yeah, grew up in church and didn't start really making my faith my own until, I'd say definitely college. I would have said for sure I was always Christian, but when, rubber hit the road, that's when I really had to decide, is this something I for sure want to follow?
So that was college.
Well, I had an experience in college, and then after college, when I went through a really hard time, that's when I was like, is this something I really believe? I'm down in the darkest part of, whatever, darkest part of my life that I ever went through. And I really had to wrestle with, is this what I cling to or not,
So if you are just
We got
tuning
real deep,
in,
huh?
yeah, if you're new here, we want you to know we're so glad you're here, and no matter what you believe, where you're from, you're welcome here. If it's not yet apparent, we're both Christian folks. I have spent the last decade as a pastor at a local church, Brigitte.
Well, currently I work as an ultrasound tech for the last 14 years.
14 years, so since she was 3. We're 36, but so I want to know, because actually I don't know that we've ever gotten deep into these college experiences for you, and I really want to dig into that. I want to hear more about that, because here we are 9 years into marriage, and I feel like there might be something more there to mine for me to understand you better, and I want to do that. So let me catch up with you maybe, and then we'll go from there. What do you think?
All right.
Okay.
So you're since we're doing faith journeys, What's your faith journey?
I remember it all very well looking back on the summer I turned 18. We lived in a one-room rundown shack on the outskirts of Anybody who is listening to that and knew that song, if you're watching on YouTube, comment in the comments. If you're on the podcast, let us know. Shoot us an email or however you can what that song was. But anyway, all right, so I actually did come from a pretty small town originally. My mom was from North Carolina, but I guess I moved here when she was 2.5, maybe a bit under 3. And it was in Central Florida, like this town.
Like she moved to Central Florida from North Carolina?
Yes.
And that's where she stayed? Oh, okay.
Well, they moved to North Florida as a little girl, and then they moved to Central Florida. This little town, Mascot, Florida, was... I don't know how long it is exactly. It's like this, in my head, it's like just this stretch of Highway 50 in Central Florida. And it had no red lights and a couple bars and a gas station. The Jiffy, if I remember correctly. You could go to the Jiffy and get yourself a bag of chips and a Coke sometimes. And that was very exciting. In the next town over, that's where things were.
Is that where you went to school, like the next town over?
No, there was an elementary school in Mascot.
Oh, okay.
But I also went to Groveland, Claremont, and Mineola elementaries because we moved around a little bit, just in that county there. But Groveland had red lights, grocery stores, including but not limited to the Bent Can Store. This was legitimately, there were aisles full of cans that had been like bent in transport. And they were sold at great discount. And I remember buying bent cans there of beans, typically. My grandma would buy. And also, from time to time, you could get some pig's feet. And she would eat them. Or pig's ears. Yeah. Yeah.
Nope.
So,
No, thank you.
I remember the taste vaguely. Very cartilaginous, I feel like.
You probably blocked it from memory.
Probably it's a traumatic memory. My grandma would eat it. And I'd be like, no thanks, Grandma. But this little town had that and a juice plant. My stepfather worked there for a while. The orange juice. They made orange juice. They processed orange juice. Yeah.
Florida oranges.
Florida oranges, yes. My grandma had orange trees in the back of her house before the freeze of '89. I sound like an old prospector. I remember before the freeze of '89, we had orange trees in the back of Grandma's house. And she told me if I cracked the leaves, they would smell good. And if you leave the peels out, you could chew them like a breath freshener, but free.
Oh.
Anyway, I mean, that's good podcast content. I have no idea.
Well, you did tell me that, yeah. How you can chew the peels after you drive.
So, small town. My grandma loved the Lord. My mom tried, I think, pretty hard to keep us in church. My father and my mother split when I was very, very little, like 2.5, I feel like, approximately. And so I didn't grow up knowing him. My mother worked a lot. She did remarry again. That wasn't the best thing in the world ever. There was a lot of dysfunction as time grew on. Abuse, just badness, not good. And that didn't work out. A lot of details there. But she tried really hard to make things work out, and she tried to keep us in the church. We ended up eventually moving to like the Sarasota area, and then my grandma ended up there. She wasn't in great health. My mom had spent years of her life trying to help take care of her as well, and she ended up in a home before she passed. And she passed around the same time as my stepfather went out of the picture, which was, you'd think for the net benefit, but also there's an income change that happens there. Mm-hmm. And so we were already, poor would probably be the accurate word. We had lived in a homeless shelter before when we moved down to Sarasota because, the city is just so much different than rural areas cost-wise.
Oh, yeah.
Whole other world. And then things got, I would say, worse from there. And, my mom had to work all the time. Mm-hmm. And my grandma had passed. And there was nobody to take us to church, nobody to keep us close to God. And frankly, my experience in the church had been really poor at that time. Because my aunt and uncle were the pastors of the church we attended in Sarasota, and they're wonderful folks, wonderful people. But, kids are kids, and they can be cruel.
Yeah, I know.
And they knew I was poor, and they picked on me for that. and they
The kids did?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it felt like a lot of the folks in the church kind of looked down at my mom and me for our lifestyle. Now, some of that might have been in our heads because of insecurities created by our own knowledge of our status in life. I'm not saying that's good. It's not okay. And I think I held that against them for a really long time. But in hindsight, these were people that were broken and don't know all of their blind spots. How many times, like, how many traffic accidents have you been in? You were like, oh my gosh, I saw that happening. I let it happen anyway. Probably none, right? We usually have issues, major issues in life, accidents in life, when we can't see it coming. And so in hindsight, you see things a little better. And I couldn't see at the time that they were, it was just some of their brokenness, and they couldn't see that they were hurting anybody. So I don't hold it against them. They had no malice in them at all. I don't really think at all. In fact, some of them were very kind and loving and tried to help in the way that, 90s church folk with frumpy dresses try. With the shoulder,
like
there were shoulder pads.
Well, that was like the 80s, but like, yeah.
Yeah, but we were behind. It was a small church. Anyway, we were behind. I thought it was a big church and a couple hundred people, but anyway. But after that, there was nobody really to keep me in church. I had just started transitioning into like the youth group, and it was like, oh my gosh, like there's couches here, and there's this new show called Veggie Tales. That's like there's 3 episodes out now. Oh my, it was like 1997.
Wow.
Yeah, and I heard about this band called DC Talk, I believe. Yeah.
Audio A.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. No.
That's about the same time, I think.
So all that, and then it just got cut off, and and so I fell away from God, and I started looking for meaning in other things. Found out I could talk to people, especially but not limited to. I could talk to girls, and I liked girls. I like you the best. You're the best ever. I want to clarify that.
Thanks.
But I liked girls, and so as I fell away from the people of God and from the church, I sought meaning in other things: relationships, academic success, girls, mostly in girls. And I had Disney syndrome. You know what I'm talking about? People listening in audio, if you can't see my face, I don't mean that literally. There's not a Disney syndrome, I don't think. But
I don't think so. But I mean the idea that relationships and romance happens like a Disney movie. It's like, oh, girls in distress. Oh, Prince Charming comes to the rescue. Oh, that's all the trouble they face, and they live happily ever after.
Happily ever after.
And then people in the real life meet. They put their blinders on, basically, get married, and then have real life. And it's like, oh, you do what? You don't brush your teeth? Oh, you leave your clothes on the floor? Amongst the petty things. But then obviously bigger things come up because, life happens and stuff goes on. And then you are faced with this, well, it's not supposed to be like this. It should just be happy and everyone lives happily ever after. And the fact that I'm even dealing with a problem must mean that we aren't right for each other and that we must not love each other. And then they divorce.
Relationships aren't supposed to just be easy all the time?
They are not, in fact. The relationships that work take work.
Work it.
Yeah. So, I feel like that's a big thing in society that
especially in American society,
hurts,
I think.
Really hurts marriages because I feel like people have an unrealistic expectation of what it's supposed to be like.
Yeah.
I mean, I did, I never, because of my upbringing, I never considered divorce, when we had fights, but I didn't expect
really
it to
comforting
be
to
so
know.
hard.
That is really good to know.
No, but I didn't expect it to be so hard, merging our lives together with
very
us.
difficult.
With us being so different. Not that you're difficult. I'm difficult in different ways, if you want to say that, but we're different, and so my strengths are not his strengths.
Right.
But once years into marriage, I started to really value the difference is when I feel like we really started growing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it was the Disney syndrome thing, which I think obviously we agree on. So that was kind of what I was hunting. And it led me down the wrong path, right? Obviously, like we believe there is a need for a relationship with a perfect, loving creator, God. That need is built into us because we were made for a relationship with him. So we try to replace it with other things and other relationships, and those fall short. So you look for other places to find meaning. We all do. And as I got older and got into later in high school, early in college, those things started to become more dangerous. You know, I was always a pretty straight, quote unquote, like straight-laced, like well-behaved kid. For the most part, I got into some trouble and stuff, you know, like as a boy does. Oh, Lord, please don't let my boy get into my trouble.
Oh, gosh. I don't even want to think about that.
But as I got older, I started to look in other places because those things weren't filling me. And so I started to look into substances that weren't good for me. I drank a little bit, even though it's funny because I hated alcohol because of what I had seen it do with people, the abuse and the anger. But I was looking for escape, right? I dated a girl. I usually, when I share my story, I usually share like the 3-minute sanitized, like Vagrant for church version, you know? I dated a girl who was really into pot. Like, I know people who smoke pot, but like, oh my gosh, she would lie, cheat, and steal for it, which is weird. And I couldn't deal with it. So to deal with it, I started smoking pot. That was the way I handled that, which was obviously quite stupid. But, you know, it didn't become like the thing that ran my life. But I did some stupid, right? So, like, I had poor experiences. I suffered every type of abuse and poverty and all this. But then, like, also I made my own choices. And there comes a point in everybody's life where you can't say, oh, well, the challenges of my situation are the reason I'm making these choices. They have contributed to your psychology and the way you think and the choices you make. But, like, you make those choices, man. And those are on you. And so at this point, I would say I started making choices that were my own, that were poor. And again, I can trace all that back to we weren't around the people in the Word of God. My mom did the best she could, but I think that that changed the trajectory of my family. Now, Brigitte, you were saying, like, you're in college and you start coming up against some things that challenge your faith. Can you tell me, like, some of those things were?
So I remember early college, I went to a camp thing, and it was like, yeah, I want to follow God, and I hadn't really experienced any big hardships at that point. And then within the next couple of years, I went through a couple relationships, and then probably when I was 21, around there, 22, I met someone, and we were together for like almost 4 years, and we got engaged. And
it was just 4 years?
Yeah, it was about 4 years.
Okay.
And, you know, that's a long time,
Yeah.
I feel like, for a Christian, you know.
Well, at that point in your
Christian
life,
that,
it's, 20% of your life or something, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I was early 20s, and I knew towards the end, like when we started trying to like plan
15%, yeah.
a wedding, and he kept wanting to put it off. Like, it was just, there had been red flags that I ignored. And so eventually it was called off, and there was a lot of still back and forth for several months after that. And eventually, like, he reproposed, actually. And then I still ended up giving the ring back after I accepted it again, because I knew, like, God, it was just the weirdest thing, because God did not give me peace until I broke it. So even though it was like the most heartbreaking, like, I was in such despair, like, I called out of work for like a week, and I just like stayed with my parents, and I would just cry all day. But it was like, as hard as that was, and as heartbroken as I was, like, I knew it was the right decision, because when I would be with him, like it wasn't, like God just did not give me peace. And there's no other way to really explain it other than that. Like I just felt so unsettled and not at peace. And it was because I was obviously not the right thing for me. And I'm so glad that I listened and like I did the hard thing. And that was the hardest thing I had ever, because eventually like it was my decision. And that was the hardest decision I'd ever made up to that point in my life. And after that, I did a spiral for a few months of really bad decisions with alcohol and guys and going out and stuff. And that was when I got to my lowest low and really had to decide, is this Jesus thing for me? Because, I mean, I was searching for happiness and peace everywhere and clearly not finding it, and realizing at that point, hey, maybe I need to get back in church. Like, I haven't really been. I don't really have any. I realized I didn't have like any Christian friends anymore.
And you were. This was. I know what year this was. You were how old?
I mean, I was like 26.
Okay.
26, and yeah, that's when I really made the decision. I'm gonna go back to church, and I'm gonna find Christian friends, and I'm gonna start doing what I know is right from what I knew growing up. And I knew I just needed to be back in church because I needed different friends. Like the friends I had were not getting me to where I wanted, because I knew deep down I wanted to marry a Christian man. Like I knew that was what I wanted. I wanted to raise my kids in church. Like, and then when I decided at the pit of my existence at that point, like that's what I wanted. I was like, well, how am I going to meet this Christian man who, in a bar? Like, it's not going to happen. I was like, I need to be in church, and I don't need to be in the bar because he's not looking for a man in the bar or a woman in the bar. And so I got to change things. And so I started going back to church.
So my return to being with God was a little different. I had been in a number of long-term relationships, not quite as long as yours. But the thing was, even when I was out gallivanting, I guess you would say, I was chasing the thing I think God made us for, which was for man and woman to be married, right?
Yeah.
I wanted that desperately, even if it was tainted by Disney gunk. Like, I really wanted that. And I had been in a couple of long-term relationships. A lot of stuff fell apart for me when I had been living in Orlando for a while. I went to UCF. That didn't pan out. Ended up partnering in a business with some guy. That didn't pan out. And in the midst of all this, I met my father. I met him when I was 19, and we talked a little bit over the course of a couple of years. And the first question he asked me, I will never forget, was, "Are you here to hit me or to hug me?" And my response was, "I don't know yet." And I did not know. But one of the next questions he asked me, there was obviously a little more talking there, but he said, "What's your relationship like with Jesus Christ?" And I was mad, man. Like, what does this Jesus stuff have to do with anything, right? I haven't talked about Jesus in years at this point.
Yeah.
And, but he was a kind and seemingly very loving man. I was trying to put all this together. And,
well, yeah, because you didn't have any recollection of him from when you were little.
Very vague, like baby memories. Yeah, like when he visited when I was 4. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Like, I don't remember things.
Yeah, well, you will. It's a whole other podcast conversation. Your lack of memories.
I feel like it's because I didn't have like traumas that defined parts of my life in my childhood.
Yeah.
But anyways.
So, I met him, and we built a relationship, and then when things really all kind of fell apart, like bad country song style, like I lost my job and my place to live, and everything was in storage. If I had had a dog, it would have run away with somebody in a truck, and my car was about to get repoed, and I just didn't know it, and all this stuff was falling apart. I said, "Hey, let me come down for Christmas. Never spent a Christmas with you." And this all happened like the 23rd of December of 2007. And I came down, and I ended up staying. I had a couple months before that, when things really started falling apart, I had been on the phone with him, and he was like, "Hey, as unlovable as you feel, God loves you, and he loves you so much, he sent his son for you." And I was not wanting to hear it, but also in my heart, I knew. This is the annoying thing. Like, I'm an analytical, scientifically minded kind of guy. But in my heart, I knew. There was this like certainty that he was speaking truth, and I needed it. And so I said yes, and I prayed a prayer with him over the phone. And it wasn't like everything changed in my life overnight, but things started to shift.
Yeah.
And came down here, stayed with them for a while, started turning things around. A few years later, I'm growing. I'm feeling like there might be a tug in my heart toward ministry, which is a whole crazy kind of thing.
Right.
Still failing miserably at relationships. Failing utterly miserably. And not picking the right women and or not really being the right guy, because I was trying to live half in the world and half in the way that God wanted me to live my life. As that started to get into a better place, I think that's where we could say our stories intersect a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because right at the point where you decided, you know what, maybe God wants me to be single, nothing's working out. And at the point where I started coming back to church, that is when we had a meet cute.
A meet cute is what they say in the film industry. That is, yes.
I know.
It was not meet cute, though. It was meet ow. If you're not watching, it was meet ew. That might be more clear to you. Ow. H's are ow. Oh, Jimmy Fallon has informed our culture now.
Yeah, so we met. I guess we're gonna go into how we met. I mean, why not?
We can a little bit, yeah.
Well, the short of the story of how we met is,
how did you end up where we met?
I ended up at church because I knew I needed to go back to church. And so I had been going only a couple weeks and somehow had gotten plugged into like a girls group, like a life group, Bible study type gathering. And one of the girls was actually moving away and she was like going to a different state. So they decided after church one night, which was an evening service, like in a downtown area, to go out to dinner. So, it's like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night on, I think it was Sunday nights. Was it Sunday nights? And we were all out to dinner. And so they invited like a bunch of people that they knew also that went to the service. And so there's probably like 15, 20 of us. And so I'm sitting already. And then we had ordered but hadn't gotten food yet, I think. And this guy walks in and
so I
sat
had
down.
Been in church and I didn't know we had been in the same service, I guess.
Yeah, well, there was only one, I think. So.
Yes, it was Sunday evening service downtown West Palm, and I was really in my feelings, guys. Way before we said in my feelings, and I had been sitting in this chair after church and just praying, like, Lord, I don't know what to do, and I know Paul said it's better if you can stay single. Now, that's a whole other topic we can get into. But I was like, I give up because every relationship I pick hurts me. And maybe God just wants me to be alone. I didn't really want that. But I wanted what God wanted for my life. And quick side note, this is what I love about our God. He is so loving and so good and so gracious that he's willing to accept not just I want what you want, God, but like he will accept I want to want what you want, but I don't really want to want what you want.
At the moment,
right? Like, and he accepts that, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll take it," and he loves us. And there's a scriptural conversation we can have there.
He takes our heart from that place, and turns it.
And it's us giving it, right? Like he wants us to give him. David say, "Put in me an undivided heart, O Lord." Right? I think that's a rough paraphrase there. And he said, "Put in me a pure heart." But there's also a passage about undivided heart that I think about a lot when I'm praying, because I'm always thinking about other stuff, like, oh, did I put the toilet seat down or whatever, all kinds of stuff, right?
Put the toilet seat down.
That might be some mild ADHD. That's a whole other conversation we can have. But I was thinking about this whole singleness thing, and I told a buddy who was a pastor of mine, but this was before I was in full-time pastoral ministry. Like, I was like, hey, I think the Lord may want me to be single. And he was like, no. Okay, there were these girls waiting. By the way, at the same time to go to this going away party for a mutual friend. And he was like, no, go date one of those girls over there. And I was like, nah, dog, here's the deal. I didn't say nah, dog. I probably didn't say nah, dog. But
no, you probably didn't.
I was like, hey, man, here's the deal. I know those girls, and I know that last night they were out of the club. And I'm not here to judge them. Like, whatever, I've done that a fair amount. But also, like, I know the Lord is calling me to something. I was more certain of my calling at this point. Mm-hmm. And I don't think those girls want to keep up, because what if the Lord calls me to a hut in Uganda, right? Mm-hmm. Or a yurt in Tajikistan, right? Yurts are very cool. Anyway,
They are.
Are those girls gonna be down for that? Because that's the girl I need, right? I need a ride or die kind of chick, like who is there and wants to chase after Jesus and be a team together no matter what that looks like. And I don't think those girls are ready. And he's like, no, man, you'll be all right. Don't worry about it. And he's like, you're fine. All right. So I told those girls to go ahead because I was being all emo-y about it. Children, if you're listening, and you shouldn't be listening, this is not for children, but also younger people, if you're listening, sit back and I will tell you of emo and what it means. But nobody knows it. No, emo's gone now, right? Okay.
I guess. I mean, we're old now.
We're not. No, we're young. We're elder millennials.
Yes.
Well, we are the elder millennials. I will tell you of the original Nintendo Entertainment System.
I don't do like a millennial.
Oh, gosh. Okay. So I told him go on ahead to this party, which was at a restaurant right down the street from church. And so I went probably 20 minutes after them, 20 minutes later. Walked down the stairs of the building, turned the corner, it was downtown, and walked past the restaurant toward where my car was. And I looked in this big storefront window at the restaurant. And now here's the other thing. It's a sushi restaurant, and I really like sushi. Like, I like sushi a lot, guys.
And what's funny is I don't like sushi.
And she's not like you now, but I've been training her. I'm working on it, Lord.
Yeah, now I kind of do. But back then I did not. What I got? Maybe I got like pad thai or something.
You did actually. I think you did get pad thai.
Did I? I mean, it's not
but
like
I'm walking past the window, and I look in, and there's all these people. I like people, and there's sushi. And there was an open seat. People. One seat remained open at the end of the table.
The head of the table.
The head of the table.
Because no one wanted to sit there, you know.
And I was like, I'm going to take that because I like sushi. Like, fine, I'll go in. I like sushi. My belly got the best of me. And I came in. And I sat down. And next to me was this girl who seemed perfectly nice, named Kimbre. And fine, a little quiet, but whatever. And next to her was this other girl.
Super blonde girl.
Super blonde, wicked tan. She had been up in the tanning bed, y'all. She had the gold package, not silver, okay? I think she had, I don't know. And she was so quiet. And, like, not talking a lot. And...
I'm an observer.
You're an observer.
I'm an observer.
And her name was Brigitte. And I was not into her very much. And you were, how'd you feel about me?
I thought you were loud and obnoxious.
And she was annoyingly quiet. And we will have to get into that at another time.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a little bit of who we are. And like you said in the beginning, from time to time, we'll be talking more about things that we are learning or things from our past. But we really want to bring on people that can talk about things in their field that we maybe know nothing about or maybe know very little about, things that maybe we're passionate about also, and we want to share that with you guys. So if you don't want to miss that, make sure you subscribe to the podcast if you're watching on a podcast thing. And if you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell.
And hit the like button, guys, because that really is the biggest thing that we'll tell people. But let us know where you're watching from. If you're new or if you're already part of the OFB family, go ahead and comment below in the comments on YouTube, or just hit us up if you're on the podcast side. Subscribe to the feed, and we will be coming out with more of these. And if you have ideas, shoot us those ideas. You can reach us at contact.ourfamilybee@gmail.com. Also, you can follow us on Instagram at OFB Social. That's OFB as in Our Family Bee, OFB Social. It might change in the future, but hey, whatever. That's what it is right now. And, man, I actually really enjoyed this, babe. How about you?
Yeah, same. And if you enjoyed it, too, make sure you leave a review or a rating because that's super helpful. And I guess until we meet again.
Don't forget, life is better together. Hey.
Ba-bam.